This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we're here to help you be happy, healthy, and wealthy. That is the intention every single time that we get together. And today we're going to talk to somebody that has a fascinating background, something that's close to my heart, tennis. As you guys know, my son, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about so many amazing lessons. And quick shout out to Mr. Dick Gould, who introduced us together. And I'm so fired up to have you on the show. Jeff Salzenstein is a former professional tennis player, coach, and speaker who has achieved many successes throughout his career. He is passionate about helping leaders and organizations achieve their best performance by sharing his knowledge and experience. Jeff was a two-time team captain, leading Stanford to back-to-back NCAA championships in the 90s and broke into the top 100 in the world rankings at the age of 30. He has played against some of the greatest tennis players in the world, and he is a member of the Colorado Tennis Hall of Fame. Jeff has also built a successful online tennis instruction platform called Tennis Evolution. Brother, welcome to the show. How close was I to butchering your last name? Because I tried, but I'm not sure.
You went with, I'm glad you rolled with that first question, because you went with Stein instead of Steen on that one. But before the show, you had it, you locked in. And here's what I want to say about that. I played 11 years on the pro tour. I'm playing these matches, and you have these lines judges and these umpires calling the score. Number one, most of the time, well, not most of the time, some of the time they forgot how to pronounce my name. So they would say Salzenstein to serve, instead of Salzenstein to serve. But what was really interesting is that sometimes they would get it right from the start, Salzenstein to serve. And by the end of the match, my name had morphed into Salzenstein, Salzentine, Salzenberg. I even was called a Berg one time. So pretty interesting how my name just takes on a life of its own.
I mean, after hearing all that, I want to call you like Saltine Cracker. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it is like, I can remember that. And I should be better about this. That last name in Boca, we have more I should know this, man. I totally screwed it up.
I'm a quarter Jewish, and I've spent time in Boca. And yes, there should be, the Steen should be thrown in there. When we go over to Germany, it's Stein. Over here, it's Steen.
I should know these things. But anyway, brother, I'm so glad you're here. You're awesome. So, I mean, I'll let you take it wherever you want. The background's incredible.
Thank you.
Let me just say one thing before you dive into your pro career. Colorado is not exactly the mecca of tennis players. So we're clear, guys. So for what you've achieved, I think is remarkable. Being at one of the most world-renowned universities and winning back-to-back national titles, brother. That's amazing, man. I love this.
Well, we know, thank you so much. We know that when you started your podcast today, the word you used was intentional or intention. I'm a big fan as a mindset coach, as a keynote speaker. I love setting intentions with everything I do. And it's funny, when I was 12 years old, I had a goal. And that goal was to play for Dick Gould at Stanford University. Now, coming from Denver, Colorado, which is a ski state, not a tennis state, I wasn't in a formal program. I didn't have a formal coach back in the day. We didn't have homeschooling. I went to a public school. I played 1 hour a day, and I had this dream. And somehow, some way, I was able to achieve that dream, not even really knowing how to manifest it, but clearly I did. It was like, I don't want to say it was an accidental manifestation, but it's pretty interesting when you do put your mind and your heart into something that you're aligned with and you believe in, some pretty magical things can happen. And that's what did happen. And my tennis career is, you can summarize it as a lot of ups and downs, a lot of bumps up and down, a lot of success, a lot of challenges. And I think you'll see that across the board with all athletes and with all people that have achieved some type of success. We actually end up failing more than most people, and then we just get back up and we keep going. So my story to get to Stanford is quite interesting. And then I think my story at Stanford is interesting. And then, of course, the pro career. So I'll go wherever you want to go with it. Where you want me to steer it next.
Well, I want to give people context for just a moment. Playing a public program 1 hour a day, he's going against kids around not just the country, but the world that are in academies that do, let's say, 5 hours minimum tennis per day. So to have that will, to have that desire, to have that intention, Jeff, it truly is remarkable. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I mean, it really does baffle my mind because I'm watching my own son go through this academy experience, and to have the will, heart, desire, and talent, all of that, it's really remarkable. And then go play for arguably the greatest college tennis coach to live. So let's take it where you want, man. Where do you want to start? Because
I want to lean into that, what you just brought up. I want to give a little more specifics on how the heck it happened. So when I was 4 years, I mean, I basically was playing tennis coming out of the womb. So my father was a Division I college player, low level. He played at University of Northern Colorado, but he played #1 singles for them. My mother was a player. So I was dragging the racket around on the court at 2 years old. I had exceptional hand-eye coordination and kind of came out of the womb with athletic talent. So I was small growing up, but I probably could have played, in just about any sport just because I had fast twitch. I could jump. I could catch a ball when I was 3. I mean, there was just, I got lucky, something good happened. My parents were good athletes. That was a big start. But then my father gave me these fundamentals, and we're going to talk more about the basics and the fundamentals because my framework is around focusing on these basics and these fundamentals, these tried and true basics. And my father, even though he didn't live with me growing up, he did give me the fundamentals. And then what people always say about me as a junior tennis player is there was no one that had more internal drive. And I think people say, well, where did that come from? Here's where we're going to go a little deep right away. I've done a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of work on myself because as a coach, I want to be able to deliver to others. What I've come to understand is that when my parents got divorced at 4 years old, and I'm an only child and I'm living with my mom, single mom, working full time, we don't have any money, that whole deal. I think I made a decision that in order for me to get love and to be validated in the world, I was going to be the best. And so I did everything I could to be #1 at everything, whether it was 4.0 student, whether it was being the best at baseball or soccer. And when I struck out or when I lost a tennis match, I would cry, literally strike out in the middle. I was the kid that had his head down crying because I just wanted it so bad and I wanted it for myself. And no one had to push me. And I think that's in today's culture, we find that we have to externally push a lot of people to get them where they want to go. Mine was all internal. And so I've had to do a lot of work on that around perfectionism and being hard on myself. But I think that's what really developed that skill to just go for it, at that high level. And then as it relates to playing 1 hour a day, the method that I subscribed to was the Jimmy Connors method, which if you followed tennis or you know anything about tennis, he's one of the greatest champions of all time back in the 70s. And no one had more fight than Jimmy Connors. He used to go out on the court for 1 hour a day and he would run for every balls to the wall effort every time. And I knew in Colorado playing at 9 o'clock at night indoors, in the cold dead of winter with my stepfather feeding me balls, I knew that was the only hour I had. And I find that these academies and people playing 5 hours a day, they're playing 5 hours a day, but they might be pacing themselves. They might be giving themselves 80% effort. So I think that combination, and then I'll finally finish with my stepfather gave me a poem when I was 12 years old. And that poem is called Champion's Poem. And he gave that to me. And I've read that poem consistently throughout my life. And it's filled with lines around, a champion walks tall. He keeps his head up when he loses. He wins with class. He sometimes loses with class. You are a champion. And I used to read that poem every day. And I believe that's what shaped who I am today. So words have power, intention has power, work ethic, internal drive. All of it is the reason that I got to Stanford.
Well, a couple of things that you hit on there so important. I wrote down perfection is the enemy of greatness, right? And when we're trying to be perfect, we're trying so hard. Sometimes that it takes your greatness away, right? And you can't attain it. Now, that obviously didn't stop you. And I love what your stepfather did. What an incredible man to give you these tools at such a young age to say, look, Jeff, I see something in you. I clearly am invested in you, and I want you to know, yourself, how good you are inside. The other thing is the quality over quantity. I love that idea because you said, look, man, I have an hour and I'm going to be the best for an hour. No one's going to outwork me for that hour. Sure, laissez-faire through 5 hours. My hour beat the shit out of your 5 hours, guys. No, so I mean, there's just so much goodness in there, brother. So, all right, we get these tools, reading the poem, and then either we're off to Stanford, or I know you have some fascinating pro, career moments, and I want to touch on all of them. And here's the other thing I want the audience to know: this isn't all about tennis. So we're clear. We're weaving in so many life lessons, and that's what I loved when you and I first talked. I was like, oh yeah, this is gold. So you take it where you want, brother. Because
I will. Yeah. For the listeners at the, as we go, we're foreshadowing here. There's some big, deep, heavy stuff coming around my family life and what transpired. But first we need to set the tone with the tennis. And, when I was 12 years old, I was a national champion. I won a national championship at 12. And that was 10 months after I got the champion's poem. So probably no accident. But here's what was interesting. 3.5 years later, I'm almost 16 years old. I'm 5'4", 102 pounds. I'm using a phone book to see over the steering wheel with my learner's permit. And I'm losing to all the players I used to beat. I went from number 1 in the country to 69 in the country, losing first round at Kalamazoo, which is the national championships in the 16 and unders. And everyone counted me out. It was over for my junior tennis career. And I gave up skiing. I gave up basketball. I gave up baseball, and I changed tennis rackets and coaches, and I doubled down on the fundamentals. And I got back to the top 5 in the country by my second year of 16s. At 15 and a half, that's the time when kids quit. Like, hey, I was number 1. Now I suck. I'm done. I'm going to go hang out with my buddies and drink and party, have a great time. I did the opposite. I said, I'm doubling down on my college scholarship, whether it's Stanford or Northwestern or wherever. And so that is how I got on Coach Gould's radar, because I got back to the top 5 in the country. I go to Stanford. It's my dream school, coming from Colorado. A lot of kids from Florida and Texas, and they're coming in. And it was actually, in a way, a kind of a step down for the top juniors, because they were playing pro tennis events at 17, 18, ITF juniors around the world. I'm coming from Colorado. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I've hit the mother load. I'm practicing with the best players in the country every day. I went 22-4 my freshman year at number 5 singles. I was a nice little player at the bottom of the lineup, but there was a problem. I had one of the worst serves in college tennis. I couldn't break 100 miles an hour. I was spinning that thing in, and then I was just finding ways to win. And so between my freshman and sophomore year, I went to go play these pro tennis tournaments, and the satellites, it's like minor league baseball, single A. I couldn't get out of the qualifying rounds because of my darn serve. So I made a decision, another pivotal moment in my career. Do I keep following the herd and playing pro tennis all summer and getting my butt beat? Or do I try something different? Tried something different. I went back to Denver, Colorado. I got out a hopper of balls, and I said, I am going to try to figure out this serve thing. And one day, watching Wimbledon, Goran Ivanisevic, who was one of the best lefties back in the 90s, he won Wimbledon. He's serving 130 miles an hour left-handed. I see him on TV. This is before YouTube. And I said, I'm going to go out the next day and I'm going to model Goran Ivanisevic. So the power of copying or modeling someone you want to be like. So I go out the next day and I model Goran. I grew 3 inches and put on 20 pounds, and I'm modeling Goran, and I added 20 miles an hour to my serve. It was an accidental transformation. I had no coaching. I didn't study any video analysis. I just copied Goran. So I go back to school, and Coach Gould, his jaw dropped. He's like, what the heck happened to you this summer? You are not the same person. You are now playing number 2 singles your sophomore year. So I literally transformed in college unexpectedly. I was planning to go to Stanford, get my degree, and then go work for, the internet company or a private equity firm, whatever. All of a sudden, I'm now 6'1", 165 pounds, serving 125 miles an hour. Junior and senior year, number 1 singles team captain, 2 national titles. And I said, hey, let's try the pro tour. My first year on the pro tour, I went from 900 in the world to 150 in the world, shot up like a just a rocket ship up the rankings. And that allowed me to play Michael Chang at the US Open. 1997, second round US Open match. I'm on the big stage, 24,000 people inside of Arthur Ashe Stadium. It's on USA Network, John McEnroe with the call. And I'm up 5-4. And I serve out wide. I have a set point. I serve out wide. I come in. I had a backhand volley winner. Win the first set. The crowd absolutely erupts. I see guys from Wall Street in their suits that came to the match. They're pointing at me like, this guy's insane. He's left-handed. He's got a 30-inch vertical. He's serving 125. I'm backing up to the baseline, and the TV cameras catch a sly smile on my face. And that's when I tell the people in the world, around the world, that's when the match ended. And the reason the match ended is because the dominant thought in my head when I won the first set against the number 2 player in the world was, thank God you didn't embarrass yourself. That was my set point. That was my intention. Hey, don't embarrass yourself in front of millions of people tonight. So I won the first set, and then I lost the next 3 sets in 4 sets. It was an entertaining match. I didn't embarrass myself. But my limiting beliefs kept me from beating the number 2 player in the world. And I like to share that story because I think it demonstrates equal parts extraordinary, equal parts ordinary. All of us are extraordinary with our gifts when we apply ourselves, but we also have these ordinary limiting beliefs because we're human. And I like to share that story again because it just relates to how people can struggle with their limiting beliefs. And even I did at the top of the game. I struggled believing in myself to be even better than I was.
Yeah, brother, that is so good. And obviously incredible feat, but at the same time, that match wasn't over yet. It somewhat was, because I wrote down as you were talking that you jumping serve wise. I think people just, again, I want them to understand the equipment that you all are using to hit it that high. I mean, that's like almost what, 150 now? It's got to be, right? I mean,
well, I was using a Wilson Pro Staff, and then I switched later in my career to a Babolat, and I hit 136 on the gun. But I was consistently between 123, 127. And people used to say, and I don't like to really brag too much about all this stuff, but as you're asking me about my serve, that was my go-to. People really feared my serve, and they would always say when it hits the racket, it just sounds different. It sounds like an explosion off your racket. And I'm not a huge guy. I'm 6'1", 170, and I'm hitting these bombs. And what I want the listeners to kind of grasp is that I didn't have a good serve. Like, I was a scrapper growing up. I didn't have a weapon. Kind of like Andy Roddick. He was similar. He was a grinder, and then he developed this big serve and then won the US Open. So it's the power of, like, anything is possible. You can make transformations. You can create positive change. And you just never know. If you stay in the game and you stay curious and you experiment, some really transformational things can happen in your life.
yeah. And what I actually wrote down, Jeff, is interested versus committed. You were clearly committed. You weren't interested in getting better. You weren't like, oh, I kind of need to improve my serve. No, I'm going to go grind. Here's this guy, Goran. I'm 100% going to model what he's doing, and I'm going to commit to making it happen. And look what happened in 90 days or less in that summer break, that you grew, pick up this incredible serve. But it's not because physically, like, the world shifted. You 100% put in the work and you're committed to it. Just what I think you're saying with against Chang, it's like, if you're committed to winning that match, it may have happened. Now, again, not living in regrets, but that's just the power of intention of our minds. And you're clearly modeling that. So tell me about, before we break into anything else, the back-to-back championships, brother.
Yeah.
Not a lot of human beings that you get to walk around like, hey, man, I won back-to-back national title. That doesn't happen often. What a cool experience. What's the biggest thing you took away from your college experience, being around such an incredible leader? Obviously, I think very highly of Coach Gould. What did you mainly take away from those experiences?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because when I do podcasts, or when I even do my keynotes to companies and to, in conventions and what have you, I never talk about this story. And this story might actually be as powerful or more powerful than some of the others that I have. My sophomore year in college, I come back, I'm playing number 2 singles. Coach Gould, had this way about him. He had this this aura, if you will, the way he stood on the court, the way he managed us as a team. You know, you would look over at Coach Gould, and he's a big guy. You know, he's probably 6'2", 6'3", he's a big man. And it was like a presence. You look over at him and you saw this confidence. There wasn't a groundedness. He wasn't fidgeting. Lock the headphones there. He wasn't fidgeting. He was just stoic and stable. And it gave us a sense of confidence. And I remember my sophomore year, I'm playing number 2 singles, a big step for me. And we get to the finals of the NCAA team championships. And we're playing at Notre Dame, and we're playing against USC, our arch rivals. And we get to 3-all in matches. So it's the deciding match. And I'm on the court at number 2 singles for the national title. And Coach Gould is on the sideline with me, trying to will me over the top. And I'm playing against the coach's son, John Leach. And it's 3-all in the third set. And I break a red shoelace. We had red shoelaces because of the Stanford red. I break a shoelace on a huge point, and I have to go over and actually take Coach Gould's shoelace and lace my own shoe up. And when I come back, I'm serving at break point, and I hit that lefty wide side serve. But this time the guy I was playing against was sitting on it, and he ripped a down the line winner by me to break serve. And he won the third set 6-3. I lost the national championship for Stanford. I was absolutely gutted, devastated that I let my team down. I let Coach Gould down. I let my family down. I remember that night, people were worried about me. I went out into the woods of South Bend behind the hotel on a long walk, and my parents were walking after me, making sure I didn't do anything. But what that did was there was a fire that burned inside of me. And with Coach Gould's help, you know, he wasn't used to losing national championships, but with his patience and with his help, and he said, we're going to come back. We're going to get a little bit better. Every day, we're going to get 1% better. And you're going to stick to your guns. You're going to keep serving and volleying. You're going to play aggressive. You're going to play proactive tennis. And we're going to be back here. And I came back my junior year, and I was elected team captain. And we had 2 great freshmen that came in, Paul Goldstein, who's now the coach there and head coach at Stanford, and Scott Humphreys and others. And we went undefeated my junior year. And I owe it all to that adversity, that failure, if you will, my sophomore year, that hunger, that burning desire, and then the leadership of Coach Gould saying, we're going to be back. And I get chills, I get choked up just thinking about it. But we had one of Coach Gould's one of his 3 undefeated seasons in his 40-year, 39-year coaching career. And it was a magical season. And then our senior year, we weren't supposed to win, and we upset UCLA, undefeated UCLA in the finals. So Coach Gould helped us create a lot of magic, and I owe a lot to him.
Yeah, what an amazing experience. And you know, it's hard to see failure as such a gift in the moment, but when we look back, that's when we learn so much about who we are, what we have, the true desire, tenacity, will, everything that we really have. But it's so hard, Jeff, to say thank you for kicking my ass right now. Like, this is at that moment, I'm imagining the sophomore kid, his life is destroyed. Like, my team is right, and I let him down. That's a hard moment to come back from, and then not only come back, but go undefeated. It's incredible, brother. I don't know where to take this, because you have so many interesting things. And I know your brother has a big part of your journey.
Yep.
And obviously being a mindset coach, this is a tough one, man, because I've dealt with adversity with my own family, where it's like, when you when you have these tools and you want to share them, you want to give it over so badly. You want that person to receive that gift. And yet so often they're unable to. I guess what I'll leave it as is, we can't want it more than the person on the other side. And I've had to accept that as a coach. What's kind of your thoughts around that, brother?
Sure. So I definitely want to get into my brother's story and where this is going to take us. First, I would like to continue on after the Michael Chang match and give everybody some context about what happened next that feeds right into my brother. And so when I played Michael Chang and I lost that match, the next day I was in a hotel room with Pete Sampras's agent, Jeff Schwartz at the time, and his junior agent at IMG. And they said, listen, man, you're top 50. Like you're top 20. Your talent is insane. Sign on the dotted line. I had an agent. Everything was great. 3 months later, in an off-season training session, I felt a pinch in the front of my ankle. It was misdiagnosed for 8 months. I finally had surgery. 6 months later, I come back and play in the Miami Open, which was the Lipton or the Sony Ericsson, I think, that year that I played. And I felt a sharp pain in the back of my knee in my first match back after the rehab. So by the age of 25, I had had 2 surgeries and my body was completely falling apart. Again, another defining moment, right? This is all about defining moments in our lives, pivotal moments where we can go left or we can go right. We can make a decision. And I made a decision to become obsessed with all things high performance. Like, why is my body failing me? I can't accept what the doctors are telling me. I need to go find answers. So I crawled under every rock. I went to my first yoga class. I started eating organic food 25 years ago before it was considered cool. Started going to Whole Foods before it was Whole Foods. I was ahead, kind of a pioneer ahead in this kind of peak performance movement around health. I worked with the top experts in biomechanics and spirituality and mindset. And I applied all these lessons and got my body and my mind and my spirit in a better place than it had ever been at the age of 30. And I finally broke the top 100 in the world at 30 years old. It took me 7 freaking years to do it. So I wasn't this wonder kid like Agassi or Roddick, who's top 100 at 19, or Alcaraz, who's #1 in the world at 19 years old. At 19 years old, I couldn't even hit a serve over 100 miles an hour. So at 30, I finally break the top 100. But I would say that my pro career was 11 years of on and off again. You know, about 4 out of 11 years, I would say, if you counted all the days I was out with injury. So my career was marked by injury, but little did I know that when I started studying performance when I was 24 years old, I'm 49 now. Now I know why. Because now I get to teach all of this. I get to share this wisdom around mindset and spirituality and even understand the human body at a deep level. And so I can help people as a performance coach with the things that I studied for the last 25 years. So I feel grateful for all the injuries and for all the career that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. It set me up to be in this position. And I remember at 34 years old, I'm 11 years into my pro career. I'm burned out. I'm stressed out from all the heartbreaking losses and setbacks from playing professional tennis. And I remember going to visit my father, who was in Florida, my first tennis coach, and my stepmother and 3 siblings. And it was December 30th, 2007. And I walked in to my brother's room and sprawled out on the floor, passed out, white foamy substance coming out of his mouth. My brother Eric was overtaken by a cocktail of drugs. And in that moment, I rushed him to the hospital. I picked him up. I put him in the car. I took him to the hospital. And in that moment, my professional tennis career ended. Because I made a decision. I saw it firsthand. If my father would have called me and said, "Hey, Eric OD'd, he's going to be okay," I'd been like, "Okay, cool. I hope he's better." But I saw it like right in my eyes. I was like, "Oh my God, I have to do something for my brother." And it was like this brother love. Like, I need an excuse basically to quit tennis because I couldn't quit. My heart wasn't in pro tennis anymore. My head was pushing because I couldn't let go of the identity and and just the pain of like giving up. So I get him into rehab and he comes to live with me, and then it didn't work out. He started using again. And we basically separated for about 5 or 6 years. He went back to Florida, and Eric was on a path of destruction with the addiction just overtaking him, and ended up in prison. Went to prison for 4 years, should have gotten a life term. But 2 weeks before his trial or his sentencing, the prosecuting attorney quit because she got married. And the new one came in and did a plea deal with the defense lawyer. And so he got 4 years instead of life for his 2 armed robbery felonies that were basically because he was trying to get drugs. And so about 1.5 years into his prison sentence, you know, he's 17 years younger than I am. So at this time, he's about 21 years old. About 21 years old. He calls me from the prison house phone. He says, "Jeff, I really want to change now, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to give up the thug life and be someone I'm not and change these habits. What the heck do I do? So I sent him a book. I tested him. I sent him a book, and it was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And he read it cover to cover. He absolutely devoured it, started transforming his body, his mind, and his heart inside prison. And I watched or I observed from weekly phone calls. He's my coaching client, weekly phone calls. Here's what you got to do. And I watched this transformation in prison. He became this physical beast. He changed his thought and word patterns. He started adding prayer and meditation and breath work and journaling to his daily routine. He was cleaning the toilets at 5 a.m. He was serving others. He discovered a hidden talent for public speaking that he didn't know existed. And so it was really remarkable to watch this transformation. And, really one of the highlights of my life to see my brother find himself during this period in his life.
Yeah, man, it's I can't imagine, right? Walking upon someone that is literally flatlining, it sounds like, and for you to be able to say, all right, this is now my commitment. All of these trials, tribulations, learning experiences, everything I've gone through, now I can actually go apply it to something that I am passionate about, which is higher, performance for human beings. Or even better than that, like getting this someone I love and care for just back on their feet. What an amazing journey that is, brother, to share that information, but then again, to see somebody take it and just utilize it so much. Man, that's powerful. So I know you've talked about a framework, brother. You've mentioned this a couple of times. You mentioned fundamentals and framework. What does that look like for you? Because I think when you're talking about these things, like, all right, you give me a book, great, but you have an actual process where you're like, here's what it looks like. What am I reaching on this? I want to make sure our listeners can kind of follow how this happens, this transformation.
Absolutely. So what's so fascinating about creating a framework, something that's proprietary, if you will, to what you teach, is so much of it is based on your own experiences and the people you've worked with, and just how you've done life. And when I saw my brother lying on the floor, and I made the decision that I was going to give up pro tennis and become a coach, and at that point I moved back to Denver, Colorado, and I started coaching tennis players of all ages and ability levels, mainly junior players. I was like the Pied Piper in Denver. All the parents were sending their kids to me because I was kind of the former pro coming off the tour. And I started teaching them the basic fundamentals of the game. And then I built an online tennis instruction platform because I wanted to reach millions of people. And we did that successfully. And I really have been focused over the years in tennis on distilling and breaking down techniques, fundamentals in a simple way that's understood, because I used to get frustrated when coaches would coach me and it didn't make sense or it wasn't correct. There's so much information out there. So I've really worked hard as a coach to try to communicate a message that makes sense. And I share that before sharing more of the framework, because I want people to understand that I spent years trying to figure out as a player and a coach how to distill information down into bite-sized chunks that make sense. And so as I've been tennis coaching, and then for the last 6 years, I transitioned into mindset coaching, performance coaching, working with CEOs and leadership teams. And what I've identified is that if you really want to find your zone of excellence, the zone that the best athletes are accessing, and if you're a leader or anyone for that matter, if you want to access it, you've got to tap into your body, your mind, and your heart. So the heart is the emotional piece, the mind is the mental health, and the body is the physical health. You can't really have one without the other, right? You can't be this incredible physical specimen and then be negative all day. And you can't be really positive all day and maybe be on the heavier side, or emotionally, you can't regulate yourself when you get in an argument with someone. And so fortunately, that framework around the mind, the body, and the heart, what it's developed into is something that I call the balcony blueprint. And the idea is that you can take yourself to the basement or to the balcony with your thoughts, emotions, and habits. And what I observed with my brother is that when he was struggling with addiction and the destructive path that he was on, he was taking himself to the basement with his destructive habits, with his limited thinking, limiting beliefs, his negative thinking, his self-sabotage, all of that. And my brother really struggled with addiction. But you know what? All of us, in some way, shape, or form, at different levels, struggle with stress, a resilience, being able to deal with our emotional challenges we have, the mental health challenges that are at a skyrocketing at all-time high with anxiety and depression post-pandemic, and people are struggling with their physical health too. So I've created this framework. You get to use the balcony basics. Those are the fundamentals as part of the balcony blueprint. And then you have this 3-step process around the body, the mind, and the heart. And I just believe, and I really have stolen it from my brother, in that he was a big believer when he made his transformation. It starts with one small step, not a big step, not a big transformation. You know, my small step on my serve was to go out and model Goron, and it became something big. My brother's small step was to start to focus on getting good sleep every night while he was in prison. That was like a small step. For some, maybe that's a big step. But I really watched my brother take these small steps and develop his process. And it was a beautiful thing to observe. And when he got out of prison, he continued that momentum. I mean, he was just dominating life. He was so grateful and humble to be out of prison now and to be able to share his gifts. And I watched, you know, we were as close as two brothers could be for 3 years, for being pretty much estranged from him for many years because of his addiction. And then for us to reconnect and share these stories about how we were going to get on stages together, and and he was the black sheep and I was the, I'm the golden child that went to Stanford, and he was the guy who was getting chased in the inner city of Orlando by, watchdogs and cops and helicopters because he's trying to elude the cops. I mean, that's the stuff that he was doing when I was, doing all the tennis stuff. So I really just admired his process and how when he got out, he continued it. And then that led to, he won a prestigious speaking contest here in Denver, Colorado, where I live. And that enabled him to have his own TEDx talk. And so he was 18 months out of prison sharing his powerful message around going from a life in prison to a life of purpose. And he was the next big thing, I'm telling you. And unfortunately, about 3 years ago, the money, the success started coming. The fame started coming. He started making $70,000 a month with business coaching and speaking. And I mean, he went from zero in prison to 70,000 months in like 2 years. Like, it was crazy how fast it went. It came too fast. And, one day he decided to use drugs and he was hooked. And for the next 2.5 years, I watched this descent. And it was one of the toughest things that I've ever had to observe, the ascent and then the descent. And then ultimately, he tragically died 4 months ago at the time of this recording of an accidental drug overdose.
Well, brother, I am sorry for your loss, and to lose somebody that has found themselves and they found this peace, right? And then yet those demons can have such a stronghold. And I think what I would say to that, brother, because obviously, again, anybody that loses someone too early, you want them to find that peace and hold on to it. But here's the point. We've never arrived. If any of us think that we have arrived and that's it, like my process is done, I'm good, you've lost. And I'm not speaking for your brother. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I've seen it where people are like, I'm good, man. In fact, my younger son, like his arm, we're working on it physically because he plays a lot of baseball. He's like, I said, did you do your exercise? No, Dad, it's not hurting. I'm like, but that's not the point of this. So I just say that because I want people to understand it's an ongoing process. As when you speak to somebody, whether an alcoholic, and they're like, I'm an alcoholic still today. I'm just sober today and I'll be sober tomorrow, but I'm not sober for the next 20 years. I'm doing it today. It's really remarkable, brother. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. One of the reasons I'm here today is because I'm now getting onto podcasts around addiction and alcohol use and drugs and, living an alcohol-free life. And these are podcasts I never thought that I would really get on. But what happened was when I got the phone call on January 11th, 2023, that he wasn't with us anymore, the memorial service was 2 weeks later. It was January 28th, I believe. And I created the eulogy. I did the eulogy for it. And, my brother and I were just so connected on a deep level, even when we weren't speaking to each other because of the addiction. And I'm pretty sure he knew how much I loved him and cared about him and wanted the best for him. But I was also the one that drew the hard boundaries. I was the one that gave him the tough love, and he wasn't always happy with me with that. But I felt it was the right thing to do in those moments. And, I'm holding on to all the positives. And that's really what has given me even more juice to what I'm doing now. And what I want to do next is, I've been cultivating this signature talk and this keynote for the last year. And when he passed away, this was a guy who, again, he's got his own TEDx talk. Maybe you can include the link in the show notes. He's got his own TEDx talk. And I got that thing transcribed, and I'm looking at his lines and what he's saying, and I'm weaving in his words, his message, because people messaged me today like, oh my gosh, Eric helped me so much. I met him on Instagram, or I met him at this conference, and he was so charismatic and uplifting and got me to take action in my life. And so I feel called at a very deep level. I feel aligned to this purpose of sharing my brother's message of positive change and transformation. So what's so interesting is that I have personally experienced transformation, as I've described earlier, around tennis. And then I personally witnessed my beautiful brother's transformation. So I just, I feel called to continue his legacy. And that feels really good to me.
Yeah, brother, you're doing it. And we'll grab that. We'll put it in the show notes because everyone should get a chance to experience that. Jeff, we've run up on time almost. I can't believe it. Is there anything I didn't know enough to ask you that you're like, JM, I have to share this before we really start to wrap this up?
Sure. One thing I want to talk about real quickly is, I'm a performance coach. I'm always looking for the high leverage ways that people can improve. And we could go deeper into some of the strategies and what have you, but I know we don't have time for that. But when my brother got out of prison, one thing he did right away that I didn't approve of was he started drinking alcohol again. And even though he was able to manage it for 3 years, 2.5 years, as far as I know, I told him, I said, don't go there, man. Just don't do it. Like, don't mess with it. And, everyone has their own journey, but I live an alcohol-free lifestyle for the last 4+ years. I've witnessed how addiction and how alcohol and drugs has impacted my family. And if anyone's listening that's struggling with addiction or has struggled with addiction, or you probably have a family member or a friend, how much pain is involved with that. And I just want to share a message around, if you can get that help, you can get that support, that alcohol doesn't really serve you. It doesn't really help you. And I watched it, in an extreme way with my brother. And so I don't even get into the nitty gritty of alcoholics or being, addicted. I personally don't, as a performance coach. But if someone wants to perform at the highest level, what are the highest leverage things you can do? And it would be to go alcohol free. Like, it is the easiest thing. Well, not the easiest thing for people to change, but our culture is it's embedded that it's the social thing to do. It's the fun thing to do. And I'm not here to judge anyone whether they do it or not. I'm just saying, from a pure performance and health standpoint, it doesn't serve you. So I get on my soapbox to say, hey, that if you want to improve your performance, cut out the negative thinking, right? Get some good sleep, learn how to emotionally regulate yourself, and consider cutting completely or significantly decreasing the alcohol that you drink, and your life will change.
Yeah, you're not the first and you won't be the last to say it, brother. And I can't say that I'm alcohol free. I'm not, but it wouldn't be the first time and it won't be the last time. So brother, you're a fascinating guy. You're just such a genuine, authentic person. I'm so grateful to have you here. If our listeners, which if they don't want to reach out to you, is kind of crazy, but if they were looking to connect with you online, what's the best place to find you, Jeff?
Absolutely. So my website is jeffsalzenstein.com. And I'm an executive coach and a performance coach. So I'm happy to, if someone wants to email me there, they can do that. I'm launching my speaking business in a big way. I really want to get this message out there. I believe it can help a lot of people. And then what I'm actually doing on podcasts is I'm giving my phone number out. So if people really resonate with the message, they can text me and we can see where it might lead. Not really interested necessarily in say, hey, let's just take you on as client. That's not really the reason I'm giving the cell phone number out. It's more that I would like to connect with more people because I know that there's opportunities out there for all of us to grow, to develop, to see how we can help each other. There are a lot of people out there that are suffering as well. I might not be the person that can help, but I certainly have resources and network. And I'm pretty good at helping people find where they need to go to get the help they need and the support. And so if you want to improve your performance and health, you can send me a text. My number is 303-882-9028. You can put it in the show notes. I usually get a couple of people that text me after these podcasts, and it's always nice to get feedback that it did resonate, that my message resonated with them. And so I'll just finish by saying that I have a deep love for the work that I do. I have a deep love for my brother, Eric, and I'm going to carry on his message and help use that message to help millions of people around the world.
That's brilliant, brother. And it's definitely a worthy cause of course, and any way we can support it. Thank you for coming on and sharing all of your stories. It is absolutely invaluable information. I hope people really resonate as much as I have.
You're welcome. I loved it. You have an incredible podcast. I gave it a 5-star review and I've been listening to your episodes. So just keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome stuff.
Thank you, brother. So kind. Guys, I will say this. He's the first to literally say, here's my cell phone. Give me a text. Let me know how I did. That doesn't happen. So take advantage. Why not? Here's the other thing. I cannot wait to share this episode with my son. Not just because of the tennis, because he'll be interested because of the tennis. He will become fixated because of the lessons that Jeff provided to all of us. So do us a favor, share this. Let's honor Jeff's brother. Let's honor Jeff. Get this out, share this episode with those that you love, those that you know that could use that little extra, fortitude, that little extra gift that Jeff provided. So I appreciate you guys. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.